In the early months of 1959, in the remote reaches of the Ural Mountains, a mystery unfolds that still echoes through time. 10 seasoned hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, embark on a winter expedition. But what was meant to be a challenging trek turns into a baffling enigma. Their tent, found abandoned on the slopes, had been cut open from the inside. The hikers nowhere to be found, leaving behind a mystery. You're listening to Casual History. Welcome back to another episode of Casual History. My name is Jeffrey, here with my co-host, as always, Jacob. We're jumping into an interesting one today, but before we do that, I want to ask you to rate and subscribe our podcast if you can.
Please.
You can find us on social media as well at casualxhistory.com or on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, the whole shebang. It's a really interesting one. I think you're going to get into it, Jake. I don't know how you deal with mysteries. That's a joke. I know you love them.
I love them.
I listened to a previous podcast on this myself a year or so ago. Me and my girlfriend also listened to a lot of crime thriller podcasts, and this was one of them at one point. The mystery is really interesting to me, and there's a lot of things that just screamed, this should be a Casual History episode. So that's what I brought here today.
Dude, I'm so ready to go off the rails on theories. You have no idea. Let's do it.
We're going to get into it. From that cold open, for those who do know a little bit about it, I tried to dig up some stuff maybe that was relatively unknown, whether that be evidence or theories. So we got a lot to get into. Hopefully it keeps you entertained. Hopefully it keeps you guys engaged. We're going to jump in. This is Casual History. You know how this goes. I'm going to set the scene and then we'll get into the story. You ready, Jake?
Let's do it.
So, rewind yourself to 1959. I mean, I know you were alive back then, Jake, but
Yes.
we're gonna have to act like you weren't. Okay.
Okay.
The Soviet.
Thanks for that. I like the little subtle dig before you begin.
I mean, you're an
appreciate
old
it.
man. You know, it made sense. The Soviet Union was a place of contrast, and that's where we're going to be diving into. And so, it was a powerhouse in the space race, yet the society of young people sought escapism and adventure. And the main place in particular would be the wilderness of their country. You know, there's a lot of it. They have a lot of country, and adventure was a call to action for a lot of people. And so this is the overarching backdrop of our story about the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Okay.
I don't know what you know of this incident, Jake, if anything. Maybe that's a good place to start.
Bits and pieces. I have actually, because we listen in the same circles, I have heard a little bit about this story, and I believe I have like a faint memory of a certain theory. So I'm excited for you to fill in those gaps, because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I'm forgetting.
Yeah, I'll do my best. And again, if I missed anything, like this is a cult following type incident / mystery that everyone's got an opinion on. So if I hit something wrong, let me know. If I hit something right, praise me, please. I need it.
All the praise.
It helps my ego. But the basic backdrop is there's a group of 10 students from the Ural Polytechnical Institute that were going on this adventure. They were led by Igor Dyatlov, an experienced yet young 23-year-old hiker, and they all embarked on a ski trek across the northern Urals. Their destination was Ural Mountain, a name which I found interesting. In the local Mansi language, which is the tribe that lives around and near the mountain, that means don't go there. So
You're joking, right?
No, that's the translation.
That's insane.
Which I assume would be based on their own tribal knowledge.
There has to be a story. There has to be some sort of passed down generational story that's like, yep, we don't go here. We don't like this mountain.
So they just named the mountain. I think that's a really fun thing that information used to do. They would just put if it was danger, they would just say, hey, this is dangerous.
It was Yelp. It was Yelp. They were letting you know which mountain was the best.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Back when things were able to be named, you know?
Things were so simple back then.
Yeah. How do you like to be in a time where nothing was named and you got to create the names for places, you know?
Dude, I would have gone crazy with that power.
Yeah.
You can't give that to me. I would totally abuse that and name it something really crazy.
Yeah. Well, despite the mountain's name and its ominous figure, for these seasoned hikers, it was a challenge they were eager to take on, as most mountains are for a lot of people that are in this world. The background on the people, it was a mix of personalities and expertise. Almost, I don't want to, this is maybe a poor connection, but if you've ever seen the cartoon Atlantis, you have a range of people for different jobs, right? You have some people that were scientists, you had some people that were more rugged and just knowledgeable. And that was this assembly of 10 hikers and people. So
I was going to say, I have to stop you. Your first thought was Atlantis, a Disney movie, instead of something like Ocean's 11,
Listen,
like any movie with a crew.
True.
Any movie, a heist movie, come on.
But that heist movie doesn't have the adventure
right
that Atlantis has. And so that's what connected me to this story. Even though this is a serious topic and this gets into obviously some morbid stuff here.
Yes.
A bit crime scene investigation type information, because that's all we have to go off of. But the spirit of the crew idea is what connected me to the Atlantis story. So
we love the movie anyway. It's fine. I thought it was really funny that was the first thing that popped in your mind.
Just give me it, okay? You're gonna have to.
I will. The rest of the story is dark. You wanted a little levity right here in the beginning.
So the mix of personalities, as I mentioned, okay? Igor Dyatlov was the leader. He was known for his passion for the outdoors and had already completed several challenging treks, even though he was only 23. Zenaida, another member, was not just an experienced hiker, but also a student of radio engineering, reflecting the era's fascination with technology. There was Yuri, who was known for his strength and humor, and Ludmila, a young woman passionate about photography and a skilled hiker as well, who had already faced severe conditions in previous expeditions.
Sounds like an ideal crew, honestly. If you're going to go hiking, you're going with experts.
It really does, again, form that way. Another among them was Alexander, who was a physics student, a bit more quiet, keen mind, sharp guy. We have Rustam, an engineer known for his athleticism, friendly nature. Yuri, actually, another Yuri, brought a guitar along, adding a musical element to their evenings. So again, each member brought unique skills, personalities to the group, creating a bit of a microcosm of ambitious, adventurous Soviet youth of the time. And they prepared meticulously. They didn't take this lightly. They knew it was going to be a tough trek. And so carrying not just essential supplies, but also diaries, cameras, intending to document their journey. They traveled by train, and I'll post a photo. There's a really cool map that shows their travel, basically, from start to finish, and where they ended up being found, ultimately. The early part of the trek was well documented through diary entries and photographs, and these records show a group in high spirits, enjoying the challenges of the trek and the beauty of the Ural Mountains. But the mood shifts as the timeline progresses. They were supposed to return by February 12th, but Dyatlov had told their sports club that they might be delayed. And delays in such expeditions weren't unusual, given the variables of the weather and the terrain. But as days passed beyond their expected return, concern grew. And eventually, families demanded action, leading the Institute to send out search parties. What these searchers found would turn the Dyatlov Pass into a site of mystery and speculation for decades to come, leading us to this podcast. So the search parties composed of volunteers, experienced hikers, and later the military did get involved, and they embarked on a mission that would soon grip the entire nation. The vastness of the Ural Mountains, the harsh winter conditions, and the unknown fate of the hikers created a daunting task for the rescuers. As well, we'll see in the next segment that we jump into, Jake, the discovery of the tent and the first clues at the scene that opened a Pandora's box of questions, theories, and an investigation that continues to intrigue and perplex us to this day. Stick around. Now, the search for the Dyatlov group, a rescue mission, turned into an investigation, led to the first major discovery on February 26th. The search team, comprising fellow students, local police, and eventually the military, found the group's tent on the slopes of Kulat Syakhl, anonymously known as Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language. Again, another bad omen
Dead
out
Mountain.
there. Yeah, just not very lucky in that regard. Hitting that first bit of evidence, these people find a tent that was ravaged by the elements, presented a bizarre picture for them to stumble upon. It was half collapsed, covered in snow, and most strikingly had been cut open from the inside. That's a notable thing to make note of.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, this suggested a desperate escape from the inside out, not the other way around. But from what? Inside the tent, the group's belongings were scattered on the inside. Food supplies, clothing, personal items lay as if abandoned in haste. A camera, a diary left open, a pair of boots, and each item seemed to tell a partial story that was rapidly turning into basically changing from a hopeful adventure to tragedy. The investigators noted that the tent still contained valuables, indicating that whoever caused the group to flee, or whatever caused the group to flee, was sudden and overwhelming.
Wow.
So that's the first bit of intel. These people are no longer there. Their stuff is left, like they ran out of the place, cut open the tent, and ran out. Already starts this eerie feeling, at least it did for me, in the pit of my stomach, thinking, what is going on? And this does unfold. There's a lot more information. So feel free to stop me if you want to, Jake, but I'll keep rolling if you're good.
Yeah, no, I'm just imagining it. Like, I can just picture it, like, there, like, encountering that. Obviously not the news that everybody wanted coming up to that tent. And so, but dude, yeah, that one striking detail is like the fact that it was cut from the inside. Why is that the most eerie thing? It's like, yeah, I can leave my belongings in a hurry. Maybe something crazy happened, but to cut your tent from the inside, like, what are you fighting? Is it an animal? Is it them? Like, what happened?
All good questions, all good thoughts. A lot of theories surround that one question, and we can kind of piece together a semblance of an idea, which I find really interesting, but we'll take it step by step. Okay. So the scene outside the tent was equally perplexing. So that's not the only curious detail. There's a lot. So the footprints, some barefoot that were found, others in socks or a single shoe, were orderly, not indicative of a chaotic dash, but rather a purposeful movement away from the tent. They led to the edge of a forest nearly a kilometer downhill. Here, under a large cedar tree, the first two bodies were found.
Oh, both of them?
2 of the 10, okay? Or 2 of the 9, sorry. So the 2 Uris were found here. And the scene was grim, okay? So trigger warning, just for anyone listening. The 2 were dressed only in their underwear, despite the sub-zero temperatures, and there were nearby remnants of a fire. So, like, they were trying to make a fire, or they did make a fire.
What?
There were marks on the tree that suggested a desperate attempt to survive the cold night. So there were markings on the tree, 2 bodies here, frozen, obviously given the temperatures, no clothes except for their underwear. And again, as this is unraveling, they hit the tent, they find this belongings, see the scene, they follow the footsteps, which were weird because some had shoes and socks, some were barefoot, that led first to this tree, kilometer away, with these 2 people found deceased. So that's a 1-2 for you. I'll let you take that in.
Ugh, terrifying.
Yeah, terrifying.
Just hearing that. Also, what the heck? Dude, the fact that there were scratches in the tree.
Yeah, markings in the tree. Again, whether that was a Maybe they were writing a message. Maybe they knew. Who knows? Who knows what was going on? There was markings in the tree. It was just something to note as they were doing the investigation, and they were following this one by one to these people. So
Okay.
the next step we're going to take is to finding 3 more bodies that were found. Okay.
Okay.
Dyatlov himself, Zineda, and Rustam. They were located at intervals between the cedar tree and the tent, as if they were trying to return to the shelter. Unlike the 2 Yuris, this is easier for me to categorize them that way.
Right.
They were dressed more appropriately for the weather, so they did have clothes on, but not fully equipped for the harsh conditions that you would expect from these experienced trek and climbers and people. So, intriguingly, Slobodin had a fractured skull. Though the injury was not considered fatal, it was, again, an important note.
Yes.
And the autopsies, again, pointed to hyperthermia at the end of the day. But the presence of injuries, some severe, added layers of complexity to the unfolding mystery and the scene that these investigators were finding in the middle of this snowy, desolate plain next to this mountain.
There's so much that doesn't make sense. Like
exactly.
Yeah, picture so far. I know obviously you're slowly unfurling kind of a little bit of the details here, but like story so far kind of suggests some weird occurrence where maybe they were all down where the Yuris ended up. At one point, started a fire, and then it looked like somehow they decided that they were trying to make their way back. But the fractured skull obviously indicates something which I'm sure the investigators were hyper aware of, right? Like, first of all, did something out there do this to them? Was it psychological, or was it something between the group, right?
You're
Did they
already
hurt each other?
again. This is these are the theories, and you're already You're already questioning, obviously, a lot of the evidence because that's the nature of this whole scene and mystery that they're walking into. And so we're gonna jump into all of those.
No, I love this.
Just rest assured, we're gonna hit those theories and those thoughts, and try. I'm gonna do my best to present this in the best way possible to get that information. So, the Ural Mountains, we've already discussed, was known for their harsh and unpredictable weather. So that is something to note here. They were a formidable backdrop to the tragedy at hand. The indigenous Mansi people who have inhabited those lands for centuries have their own lore and respect for the mountain's power. While there was no direct evidence of Mansi involvement in the incident, we don't know. But basically, the tribal people that lived there was no evidence that they could find of any involvement. And so the region's history and folklore inevitably wove into the fabric of this story, adding a dimension of cultural and environmental context that is important to note. As the investigation continued, the remaining 4 members of the group were still missing. And the mystery only seemed to get more complicated with more questions.
Of course. Why would it get easier?
Right, of course. And so the theories began to emerge, just like you've already started, popping off after this evidence, because that's what happens, right? Ranging from the plausible to the outlandish, the public and officials and family members grappled with the inexplicable nature of the incident. And in our next segment, we're going to dive into the discovery of the final 4 hikers, the myriad of theories that this enigmatic case has spawned. So the search for the remaining members was hampered by severe weather conditions, so it kind of caused a little bit of difficulty, obviously, when you're out there trekking in the snow, to make this investigation as thorough as you'd hope. But it already made the difficult terrain of the Ural Mountains even more treacherous. And it wasn't until May of that same year, when the snow began to melt, that the final 4 bodies were discovered in a ravine, further complicating the narrative. So in a separate space away from the group, the other members that we found, these bodies were better dressed than the others, and their injuries, were far more severe, including major skull damage, chest fractures. Unlike the others, these injuries couldn't easily be attributed to hypothermia itself. And so the late discovery of these bodies, the severity of the injuries, and their location away from the other members raised new questions that they were already grappling with from the previous discoveries. So, what forces had acted upon this group to cause such a tragic event? The theories range from natural disasters, military involvement, indigenous Mansi rituals, but none have been able to fit all of these factors into one coherent storyline. The investigation, fraught with inconsistencies and lacking conclusive evidence, left a void that we're going to get into just after this break.
Jeff, you can't do that, man. Come on. My mind is going to be racing during this entire ad break. All right, guys. See you after the break.
Thanks for listening to that ad. It helps support the podcast, helps support me and Jacob, my co-host. Keep this thing going and keep discovering new parts of history that we've never talked about. And one being this mystery we're on today. I left you on a cliffhanger, Jacob. How are you feeling with the evidence presented so far? And this is kind of an interesting mix of our typical conversations around different stories.
Right.
Because obviously it's an element of crime and an element of, what we do talk about, which is mystery and history. Fun little pun, 1-2 there. But it's interesting kind of mesh that we're walking into. How do you feel so far? Any particular things jumping out at you?
All of the things. I have so many questions. I really need some answers.
Okay.
I have a couple of theories in my head, but obviously I know you're going to be diving into a little bit of like probably the science behind some of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, just hearing about the second group is really concerning. That like it feels like every one of these hikers had a different sort of, for lack of a better
traumatic
word,
ending. Yeah, traumatic ending. Yeah.
This group in the ravine now, severe injuries. Like, did they do that to themselves? Was that an animal? Was that some other, people intervening? Like, who knows? But obviously, they didn't die to the same thing that both Yoris did in that little forest area. And so it leads to like this not being a silver bullet, which totally makes sense for why we're talking about it today, right?
Yeah.
The fact that there's probably still some unknown elements to this, but it's fascinating.
So much unknown still, but we have a lot of evidence, which is the funny kind of contradiction. We have a lot of information from their photographs to their diary logs, right, leading up to whatever happened. And we also have the bodies. We have the evidence. We found them. It's not like they were lost and no one could find them and it was just this unknown mystery. We have them. We have them all in different situations, different, what's the word I'm looking for? Different states, right, of undress and preparedness for whatever was happening. It really does. Again, I understand. That's all I had was just questions, and it made me want to get more information. And that's why you can see why there's so much of a following is maybe a bad way to say, I guess, following of the story, following of the information. We're going to keep going because there's quite a bit to get into.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to bring up something real quick before you move on, though. Like the fact that they found the second bodies, like obviously just understanding, like I don't know a ton, but knowing decomposition, I really am interested to hear what the state of their bodies they found, because obviously that could be a huge hindrance to learning exactly what happened to them. Like you're losing evidence by waiting in that time of composition. Obviously not the bones, like you're still going to be able to tell a story and try to piece together something, but there's definitely evidence that's lost by that time spent before they found them.
They had to wait till the snow melted, so that again, who knows what that would have caused. Would that have moved the bodies? I really don't know, to be honest with you. That's not in my expertise, but there's a lot of questions. I do try to present, there's some information here that will try to get some of those loopholes closed, hopefully. So jumping in where we left off, the late discovery of the final 4 hikers in May of 1959. They are found deep in a ravine, and it was a pivotal moment in unraveling the Dyatlov Pass mystery. Unlike the first 5 bodies found on open slopes, these were buried under 4 meters of snow. This significant depth suggested that they had been there since the night of the incident, raising questions about the dynamics of snowfall and wind patterns in the area. Experts pondered whether it was a natural snowslide rather than a full-scale avalanche it could have been responsible. The conditions of these bodies were startlingly different, as we've already talked about. Nikolai had a skull injury, which was catastrophic, suggesting a tremendous impact. Lyudmila and Alexander had chest fractures that were so severe that they resembled injuries from a high-speed car crash. Yet there were no external injuries typically associated with such internal trauma. And this paradox baffled investigators, leading to theories ranging from a fall into the ravine to more sinister scenarios, as you can imagine, within the group,
Yes.
or with foul play from who knows what. So the investigations focus on the injuries led to various hypotheses. The absence of typical signs of an avalanche, such as a distinct debris pattern, and an orderly state of the tent and its contents, cast doubt on the avalanche theory. So the possibility of a fall seemed plausible for this group, these three at least, or four, excuse me. Yet the severity of the injuries raised other questions about the height and the nature of the fall. The lack of external trauma was particularly perplexing, leading some to speculate about the effects of shockwaves, possibly
Yeah.
from a military explosion or a sonic boom from a jet.
Wow.
And then a later, I don't want to say purposefully held, but I want to say slow to be told.
Yeah.
That's just such a lame way to say that. But basically, the military did end up doing an investigation as well. And
Oh.
there's radiation detected on some clothing items that added a layer of intrigue to this whole situation.
What in the world happened here?
I know. Initially, this piece of information and evidence was not publicized. This detail emerged later that, again, just caused more speculation around this
Yeah.
whole situation. So the radiation levels, not dangerously high, but were abnormal. So key to mention, they weren't a part of the death of these members that we can tell because they weren't abnormally high.
But they were definitely not like naturally occurring radiation levels.
Yes, different. It was abnormally high. So
Wow.
this led to theories about military involvement, possibly linked to the Soviet Union's secretive nuclear program at the time. The remote Ural Mountains were known for the sparse population and rugged terrain, weren't strangers to military tests in the vicinity, at least. So, including experimental aircraft and missile launches. So, that's one. Let's paint that as option one. Okay.
Okay.
Option one could be military explosion goes wrong.
Even that though doesn't cover everybody's situation.
Here's the thing. If that did end up happening, the idea would be a cover up of sorts because they just killed 10 young, well known youth. Okay. And so maybe you stage a scene. I don't, that's a theory. Okay. I'm not saying to believe it. I'm just saying that is a theory. Something with military gone wrong, end up leading to all of these people dead. And then you kind of left with this weird, bizarre scene, left as a mystery.
But you have two different types. You got one that feels very, very leaning towards hypothermia, like weird, something crazy happens in their brains. They're trying to get back to the tent. They can't, and they freeze to death. And then the other group looks like they got blasted, like, not to be like obviously insensitive, like completely different kind of situation. So even thinking about military wise, say there was some sort of explosion, they seem like completely different events for each group.
It does. I do want to note too that the hypothermia does seem to be the most likely cause. But here's the question. Okay, so let's go back to the Uris under the tree, the two Uris.
Right.
Okay, the one's found undressed. There is a complex / term for when you get hypothermia, extreme hypothermia, and you think you're hot. You're reaching the end of this hypothermia process, and your body does this weird thing where you feel like you're super hot, you're in this weird state of illusion, and you undress. So the thought could have been, for those people, that's why they have no clothes.
Yeah.
But the question then would be, let's say there was an avalanche of sorts.
Right.
That closed in on the tent, they cut themselves away, and maybe they run out into, because maybe people inside were injured, like the skull fractured person that was found
Right.
between the steps. And maybe they were pulling them along. And maybe there was a storm, maybe a snowstorm was happening. The avalanche happened. They get out of there and it's in the middle of the night and they can't find their way back to the tent. The two are now undressed because they're full on hypothermic. The other three decide to leave because they built a fire with them and they know that they need to get back to the tent. They can't find it on their way back. They all succumb and fall.
Right.
But I don't understand how the others end up in a ravine farther away from this group.
Yeah. Because if they were that injured at the moment of like, even like your theory right now, they're in the tent. If the avalanche somehow caused those things, you're not moving. You're not able to walk off the side of a mountain and fall into a full ravine.
I don't understand just as much as you don't how they get separated or how the groups separate. The one group with the people under the tree and then between the tent seems to be like if that was the only group that we were talking about,
then you're like, okay.
Right. It seems to be like you could maybe thread some sort of story. The other four people were found in a ravine almost like they had fallen or that they were swept away with it. Maybe there was an avalanche and it swept part of the group. I don't know.
Right. I'd be interested to see if that's indicative, like some of their injuries that severe, especially like you're saying, like not outward, but only inward stuff. That does, in my brain at least, not knowing a ton about avalanche injuries, right? Or forensics. Like that does seem like that for me fits the mold of they got hit head on. They had huge injuries. Right. Maybe they got swept down the mountain. The other few that were maybe in the tent had a different situation. They ran down into that little forested area, tried to start a fire, got too cold, tried to head back to get supplies, didn't make it.
Yeah.
Like that's where my brain goes.
It does, but here's would be my maybe a plot hole, and this is just us bantering, of course.
Yes,
a plot hole could be, let's say that happens, are some of them asleep and some of them not? And also, if these are separate events, you would think that the others would write about it in their diary. And their logs. That's
interesting.
Right? So like if these were separate events and there was a time that passed between the four falling into the ravine, whether that was from an avalanche or from some separate incident, you'd think that there'd be a note of it somewhere within the people who were remaining in the tent that maybe just also got unlucky at the same time, the same night, the same time.
That's the most confusing part right there.
It is. And so the local context, particularly the indigenous Mansi people, right? That involvement that could have been, were they hunted? Were they attacked? I don't know if that's a prejudice of the time either, thinking that the indigenous would do that because there's no evidence whatsoever of them doing that previously. They're known for their deep knowledge of the mountain. They had established trails and camps throughout the area. However, the investigation found no evidence of external injuries, which signs of struggle, anything that would indicate an attack.
Right.
And also the Mansi's known history of peaceful interactions with hikers and explorers previously further diminished the likelihood of their involvement.
Interesting, man.
So the official investigation by Soviet authorities concluded in May of 1959. It was met with criticism with its lack of depth and transparency. So the conclusion cited, and this is, I'm going to quote this, okay?
Yeah.
Compelling natural force.
What? What does that mean?
Your guess is as good as mine. They stated that as the cause of death and was seen by the populace as vague and unsatisfying.
Yeah. I'm unsatisfied. What?
Right.
What?
It failed to address mysterious injuries, the radiation, the broader context of the incident, obviously led into alternative theories like we're discussing, many influenced by the era's political and social tensions at the time. So that's where the official mystery ended. So with the evidence that you have and I have and what we're discussing,
that's it.
That's the evidence. Decades later, with the declassification of Soviet-era documents and advancements in forensic science, the Dyatlov Pass incident has been re-examined. Modern forensic techniques such as computer simulations and 3D modeling have been applied to reassess the injury's environmental conditions. And so, there's another theory that populates from this, the Kármán vortex street theory. For example, it proposes that specific wind patterns could have generated intense downdrafts or localized avalanche conditions, potentially explaining traumatic injuries.
Okay.
So they go back to the avalanche theory essentially to try to refute the initial evidence of there's no debris, there's no evidence of any avalanche in the way that you'd see the snow being distributed on the tent, on the people, whatever
They
it
were
may
under
be.
4 feet of snow. 4 of them were. I would suspect that like 2 different events happened. Maybe the same event happened to some of them. Like maybe they're in a different location.
Right.
Something happened where the avalanche happens.
Something did happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Hits the 4 of them, right? They sustain critical injuries, get swept down the mountain. The other 2, and being terrified this is going to happen to them, right? The other 6, sorry. They run down the mountain to where the Uris ultimately end up in that general foresty area. They try to set a fire and they realize, holy crap, this is not working. Like, we can't stay out here. We're going to die. And so they try to hike it back. The Uris maybe are too afraid to make that happen.
Too gone, maybe too far gone.
Yeah, maybe too far gone in hypothermia. That's what it kind of leans towards to me. But like, I'm interested in this vortex theory too. I can't picture that.
One of the main investigators was inspired by the movie Frozen and the way that they were able to CGI the snow drift and how realistic it was and how it was able to flow. And so they used that technology. They requested that technology.
Wow.
And the animation models, however you want to, I don't know the correct term, and basically put through different models to try to come up with this theory.
Wow.
So that is a theory. The only thing that I don't understand, not the only thing, there's a lot I don't understand. Would be the localized
right
vortex happened, avalanche happened, as some of them were in the tent, some of them were not. I'm assuming the some who weren't were the 4. They get swept off into a ravine farther away. The 6 of them were trapped in the tent, cut their way out. A few of them sustained injuries, made it to a tree, made a fire. 2 of them were gone by hypothermia because they're in the middle of the night. Snowstorms happening. They're lost. A few try to get back, can't do it. They all perish.
Right.
That would be my way to thread that. I don't know if that makes sense or if I'm missing a detail that
I'm sure we are. It's still really fascinating. And again, like, you want like a resolution, right? I would if it was my family, like, and so I'm really happy that they're trying to revisit some of this stuff with newer technology because things are constantly advancing. You never know what's going to be the thing that kind of unlocks this for people.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is really insane.
Well, the fact that we have diaries, we have photos of their whole trek up to that point. So there is one photo that is mysterious, but it's mysterious. People, there is an answer supposedly to this mystery of this photo.
What does the photo show?
But I do want to share the photo.
Okay.
And I do want to post it, not with the intent of trying to sensationalize, because there is an answer supposedly in the next roll of film. So it's a film camera, right?
Okay.
And the photo scene with snow and trees. Between the trees, there is a figure that is all black and unfocused.
What?
Okay, it's off in the distance, and this photo is of this figure.
Of one of them?
But it's so creepy, Jake. It's so creepy. I don't know how to say it. It's so creepy. And it puts the hair on my arms up. And maybe I'm just a sucker, and I think I'm just wanting to believe some conspiracy. Maybe I'm wrong. And I'll leave it at that. Okay. I want everyone to make up their own mind. I want you to make up your own mind. We'll post the photo. We'll see if it's of any interest. Maybe people out there have done way more research than I have in this and have a real answer to it. But that's the mystery. That's the Dyatlov Pass mystery. That's where we're at right now. I wish I had more answers, but that's the podcast. That's the story for today.
That's awesome.
And if anything comes up on this story, I would definitely love to do a revisit if new evidence comes along. Because, there's people out there doing that sort of thing, bringing up these kind of cases. So that's where I want to leave you, Jake.
Seriously, great pod. I think sometimes there's just stuff, there's no silver bullet to all this. And so I hope this inspires you guys to do your own research. There's probably stuff that we've just missed somewhere in between that maybe we haven't talked about yet. So if there is, reach out to us, Casual X History, on pretty much any medium, Facebook, Instagram, our website. We have a submission form. Please reach out. We would love to, collaborate together. And if there is a key piece of evidence that you're like, guys, you totally missed this key thing that could unlock a different theory, let us know, because I'm fascinated by this, as I'm sure everybody is, to really find answers.
And on the next episode, we talk about JFK. like I feel like the last two podcasts. Are you guys getting tired of the mystery?
I love it, man. I love it. Next, are you ready to break my streak, Jeff? Are you ready?
I'm ready to go.
Welcome back, brave time travelers, to Time Traveler Trivia. I'm Leo, your ethereal guide. Are you ready for a challenge that transcends the ages? Here's how our game works. In each round, I will regale you with 3 tales from the vast corridors of time. These tales will be strange, bewildering, and sometimes downright wacky. But here's the twist. Only one of these stories is a true piece of historical lore, while the others are clever fabrications from my ghostly imagination. Your task, to use your knowledge, intuition, and perhaps a bit of luck to discern the real historical event from the phantasmal fiction.
Leo always has the great music.
He does. It's a bop. I know we say that every time, but it's so good. I can't help but dance over here. It's really great. All right. So welcome back to our game show element. Jeffrey, are you ready for round 1 of crazy stories?
Let's get into it.
Round 1. The sun-powered hat. In the early 20th century, did an inventor develop a hat that used solar power to cool the head, featuring miniature fans powered by sunlight? The smoke-emitting dress. In Victorian England, was there a fashion designer who created a dress that emitted a gentle stream of scented smoke intended to repel insects and create an air of mystique? Windshield wipers. Was the first effective windshield wiper, crucial for automobile safety in rainy weather, invented by a woman in the early 1900s?
All right, Leo, I'm not sure. I think I have... Well, I don't want to say I'm not sure. I mean, the windshield wiper one feels pretty real. The smoke one also, it makes me think maybe that's where the Hunger
Katniss
Games...
Everdeen, come
right,
on.
you know, it makes... And with the movie that's coming out now, we're not sponsored. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either. I don't even know if it's good.
Same. I got a message the other day that said I looked like... randomly from some random person that said, you look like the person in Hunger Games, the young Snow. I don't know who the young Snow is.
Oh, yes.
So
young Snow.
I need to look him up to whether to know if I'm going to be offended or not. But all that to say, I'm thinking it's number 3.
I don't know when the windshield wiper was really invented. Early 1900s. I mean, that seems plausible. I feel like I'm kind of going back and forth, but I kind of want to pick one of the crazier ones, man.
Go for it. Go Katniss Everdeen.
I feel
a star.
a little nuts, and like I want to go like with the sun-powered hat. I don't know why,
Really?
because that sounds fun.
What's the time period that did Leo say? I couldn't remember.
It says early 20th century.
So that doesn't seem far off, but I don't think that we have solar panels that
Well,
tiny.
it doesn't say solar panels. It says it used solar power to cool the head. So that's why I'm hinging on those tiny little words on Leo's words here. So I'm just gonna go for it. I don't know why. I'm feeling kind of crazy, and I'm finding that like with this game show, I feel like things tends to lean towards like, hey, what's the most entertaining answer is probably the most fun.
The right one.
So
right.
I'm just gonna go with it.
Let's go. Let's see what happens. I'll go with number 3, the windshield wipers.
Okay. All right. So round 1 is windshield wipers.
Let's
go. The first effective windshield wiper was indeed invented by a woman, Mary Anderson, in 1903. She developed the device after visiting New York City and noticed that streetcar drivers had to open their windows in rainy weather, which impeded their vision. So good job, Jeffrey.
Crazy. You just think a windshield wiper comes with the car, but I guess the car sometimes didn't come with the windshield wiper.
That's right. Someone had to make those little rubber things that you have to replace.
We didn't
Crazy.
have it all figured out.
All right, let's do round 2.
Round 2. The left-handed king. Was there a king in medieval Europe who was known for exclusively using his left hand, even decreeing that left-handedness be the standard in his court? The Pope's daughter. Did a pope during the Renaissance have a daughter, despite the vows of celibacy, who went on to become a powerful political figure in her own right? The dancing diplomat. In the 18th century, was there a French diplomat who was known for resolving conflicts by challenging counterparts to intricate dance-offs instead of traditional negotiations?
Okay, so what do you think?
I have an immediate gut pull to one of them. I'm not going to say it out loud.
Really?
I don't think. I think we typically do this. The first two were kind of friendly. We go back and forth. We talk about the answers.
Yeah.
And then on the third one, you
We get cutthroat.
And then you don't want to go back and forth with me, and you say you keep. I think that's why you've won the last the weeks. I think I've given you the answers.
I don't think
to be
so
fair.
at all. I think you need to
think
go
we've
back
talked
and
through
listen.
them.
I think you go back and listen to those things. I think I've had the answer right all along. In this one, I have a special vested interest in this answer, Jeffrey. So I know which one I have to pick, regardless.
I know which one you are picking, and it's the same one I'm picking.
Oh, is that
'cause
true?
I think I know it's a true story.
Okay, I'm choosing the left-handed king just because I am left-handed. So I I want to believe this happened in history. I don't know if it's true. You sound very confident in that, so it makes me feel a little bit better about my choice.
I think it is true. Even though the dancing Frenchman sounds on brand.
It does sound on brand.
I'm going to go with A as well.
Okay. All right. So let's reveal the answer. The answer is the Pope's daughter.
Whoa.
Yep. The daughter of the Pope Alexander V, a real historical figure despite the Catholic Church's celibacy requirements. Pope Alexander V had several children. She became a prominent and influential figure in Renaissance Italy. Wow. Well,
Crazy.
That one seemed vague enough that, like, okay, that makes sense. There had to be someone who broke their celibacy, right?
I mean, yeah, that seems about right.
Why didn't I choose that?
But the left-handed one, why did I feel like I've heard a story
Really?
about that being true? About some maniac that just declared left-handedness was the best.
It's true in my heart, Jeffrey. That's all that matters. You know,
Okay.
it's true in my heart.
That's
so
fine.
we'll take it. So none of us got a point on that one, and so now it comes down to the last one, which means
Can you tie it?
I have
Can
to
you
tie it.
not?
I have to. Okay, round 3.
We'll see.
Let's go, Leo.
Round 3. The Festival of Broken Needles. In Japan, did tailors and seamstresses once celebrate a day each year where they would thank their worn-out needles and give them a final resting place in soft tofu? The Night of the Blazing Barrels. In medieval Scotland, was there an annual event where villagers would roll flaming barrels down hills to symbolize the sun's return after winter? The Moonflower Parade. In ancient Mesoamerica, did people host a parade each year where they adorned themselves with moonflower blossoms, celebrating the flowers' connection to the lunar cycles and fertility?
Off the bat, I
Yep.
like the last two.
Yeah, I really, again, I'm feeling just very spontaneous, and I want to go for the Blazing Barrels because I think, how much fun would that be?
So do I.
Come on.
That's exactly what I want to go for. I don't want to just, follow you, but that's exactly what I was going to say.
It would be worth it if we were both right, honestly, because I think that's so fun. Just like,
Yeah.
I can imagine the spectacle, like, of just rolling a flaming barrel down a hill. Maybe that's not the
Yeah.
answer, but I want it to be. Just like the left-handed one, which is probably going to be my downfall this week, but I don't care at this point.
Here's the thing. I'm playing the game and going with what I think is right because
Okay.
I think either way I'm going to come out on top this week and breaking your streak, Jake. So I'm also going for the barrels. I'm going B.
Okay. Well, I'm not budging. So let's see if
Okay.
that's the correct answer. Wow. Okay. The correct answer is the Festival of Broken Needles.
Oh,
Yeah, the one that I thought
Dangerous.
sounded weird. The Festival of Broken Needles is an actual event traditionally observed by tailors and seamstresses. They thank their worn needles for their service by sticking them in soft tofu, a practice that honors the needles and symbolizes a restful break for the seamstresses. Wow.
I'm just worried about the people thinking they're going to get tofu,
That's,
and
Yeah.
maybe swallow a needle or two on accident.
I
It
just-
sounds
I
a
mean,
little dangerous.
maybe I'm just being picky, but like, do you think that would leave an aftertaste in your tofu? Like, can you like imagine getting your lunch and you're like, did you stick needles in this? Did you knitting
Yeah, a little
needles?
I
that
don't
is-
even want to imagine the scene.
I learn something new every time we play this game, Jeff. I swear.
Yeah.
I Have no idea
Crazy.
about half of these, but man, now we got to start the tradition of rolling flaming barrels down a hill. That's just what I've come to.
We alone have to make that happen.
Yep, that's it. This is what we're doing now.
Every New Year, maybe that should be a New Year's Eve celebration, or should we do it on New Year's? Like, it'd be a better like start of the year. Roll some flaming barrels down a hill. Call it a day. It's gonna be a good year.
Call it Barrel Fridays. Do it every Friday. Just for
now
to
you want
celebrate
every Friday.
just to celebrate the end of
Sorry,
the
I'm
work
out.
week.
I'm out. That is too much for me.
That'd be amazing.
I'm a one a year guy.
Okay. So we ended up obviously with you winning. Congratulations. You finally broke my
Wow.
winning streak
Giving
this
me
week.
my flowers.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe I wish I could hand you some soft tofu with some knitting needles in it right now. Just like hand it through the screen. That's what I want to do.
I'm sure you would. But thank you guys for listening. That's the wrap up of this. I hope you guys had some fun. We had some fun. Thanks for listening to the podcast in full. It really does help us. If you made it this far, give us a rating and review. I would hope you'd like what you've heard so far if you've lasted this long. If you don't like us and you've made it to this far into this podcast, I'm kind of worried about you. I'm thinking about you. I'm sending you love, as you already know. We'll see you next week.